always thought wedding day nerves were just a cliché, something brides would exaggerate for dramatic effect in movies. But that morning, as I stood in the bridal suite staring at my reflection, I felt this strange tightness in my chest that I just couldn't shake. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't exactly excitement either. It was something colder, almost like a premonition, a quiet warning bell ringing in the back of my mind. To give you some context, my relationship with my mother-in-law, let's call her Carol, had always been tense. That's the most polite way I can put it. She never screamed or openly insulted me, but her disapproval was like a perfume she wore, woven into every single interaction we had. It was in the subtle raise of an eyebrow when I shared an opinion, the forced, paper-thin smile she'd give me at family dinners. Carol was the kind of woman who could completely ruin your day without ever raising her voice. She was an expert at delivering the perfect storm in a quiet, condescending whisper. But I had made a promise to myself. I swore I wouldn't let anything or anyone ruin my wedding day. My dress was hanging right beside me, a vision in ivory satin. It was the dress I had literally been dreaming about since I was a teenager. It had long, delicate lace sleeves and a trail of tiny buttons that went all the way down the back. When I tried it on for the first time, I felt like I had stepped directly into the future I had always imagined for myself. It was perfect. While the hairstylist was putting the finishing touches on my updo, pinning the last few curls into place, Carol entered the room. She didn't knock. She never did. It was her way of asserting that no space was truly private from her. "Oh," she said, tilting her head slightly, as if she were examining a dusty piece of furniture she was considering throwing out. "So? That's the dress you chose." I forced a bright smile, determined to stay positive. "Yes. Isn't it beautiful?" "Traditional," she replied, letting the word hang in the air like it had a bad smell. "But I suppose it's fine." I tried my best to ignore the sting of her words. It was my wedding day. I was a fortress of bridal bliss, and I wasn't going to let her get inside my head. But I should have known she wasn't done. She was just warming up. About 40 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, a minor panic hit me. I realized I'd forgotten my grandmother's handkerchief, my something old, in the other dressing room down the hall. My maid of honor, Layla, had just gone to check on the reception decorations, so I figured it would be faster if I just slipped out and grabbed it myself. It would only take a minute. When I came back into the bridal suite, my stomach dropped to the floor. My dress was gone. The satin hanger was empty, spinning just slightly, as if someone had just snatched the dress from it. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. "Where's my dress?" My voice was barely a whisper. The room, once buzzing with chatter and excitement, fell completely silent. My bridesmaids just looked at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and alarm. One of them, Sarah, hesitantly pointed toward the garment rack near the door, and there it was. But it wasn't my dress. Hanging in its place was a bulky, ridiculously outdated gown. It had enormous ruffles on the shoulders, giant puffed sleeves straight out of the 80s, and a weird yellowish tint that made it look like it had been stored in a damp attic for at least 2 decades. It was hideous. Comically, laughably hideous. My heart started pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. "Where is my dress?" I repeated, my voice much louder this time, laced with panic. Just then, the door opened again, and of course in walked my mother-in-law, Carol. She was holding a now-empty garment bag in her hand, and she was smiling. It was a sweet, syrupy, utterly false smile. "Oh, honey," she said, her tone dripping with fake concern, as if I were a toddler having a tantrum. "It seems we had a little situation. Someone must have accidentally misplaced your gown, but don't you worry. I brought mine from my own wedding. It's so sentimental. A classic. And," she added, her eyes glinting, "it fits the budget-friendly aesthetic you seem to be going for." I just stared at her, completely speechless. Budget-friendly? My parents had saved 4 years to help pay for this wedding, to give my fiancé and me the day of our dreams. She knew that perfectly well. "This is not happening," I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, and lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "My son deserves a bride who respects tradition. You parading around in that tight little dress of yours, it just isn't appropriate where this one, it's dignified." I felt my throat close up. A tidal wave of anger, disbelief, and pure heartbreak surged through me all at once. My hands trembling, I ripped open the garment bag she was still holding, desperately, foolishly hoping she was lying, that this was some kind of sick joke and my dress was inside. It was empty. My mother-in-law had taken and hidden my wedding dress just minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. One of the bridesmaids gasped. Another one whispered, "She didn't." Oh, but she did. She really, really did. My knees felt weak, like they were about to buckle. But just before I could collapse into a full-blown panic, the door burst open again. It was Lila, my maid of honor, my hero. She stormed into the room, her face flushed with fury, and in her arms she was holding my asterisk dress. "I found this," she spat, glaring daggers at my mother-in-law, shoved inside a supply closet at the end of the hall, in a trash bag. My mother-in-law's perfect, serene smile finally cracked. Her face went pale. I don't know how," Sabit Lila snapped, cutting her off. The tightness in my chest instantly loosened. I could breathe again. We didn't waste a single second. My bridesmaids formed a human shield around me, physically blocking my mother-in-law from coming any closer. They helped me into my beautiful dress faster than I've ever gotten dressed in my entire life. My hands were shaking so badly that Lila had to do up all the tiny buttons on the back for me. All the while, Carol was sputtering excuses from the corner of the room, trying to twist the story into some harmless misunderstanding, but no one was listening. No one believed her. For the first time ever, her soft, manipulative tone had absolutely no effect. I took one last look at myself in the mirror before walking out. I didn't look scared anymore. I looked determined. I clutched my grandmother's handkerchief in my palm and knew, with absolute certainty, that I wasn't walking down that aisle alone. When the music started, everyone in the chapel rose to their feet. The moment I stepped through the doors, a hush fell over the entire room. It went completely silent, but it wasn't a silence of confusion. It was a silence of pure shock. I actually heard people gasp. It was audible. My father, who was walking me down the aisle, leaned over and whispered, "You look breathtaking, sweet." But I knew the silence wasn't just because of my dress, though I know I looked exactly the way every bride dreams of feeling on her wedding day. The silence was because everyone, and I mean everyone noticed my mother-in-law's face. Her jaw had dropped. Her expression was a twisted mask of outrage and utter disbelief. She was frozen in her seat in the front row, too stunned to even stand up with the rest of the guests. I walked slowly, deliberately, my eyes locked on my fiancé at the end of the aisle. With every single step, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, years of biting my tongue, of shrinking myself to make her comfortable, of trying to win the approval of someone who never, ever intended to give it. When I reached the altar, my fiancé's eyes were glassy with emotion. He whispered, "You're perfect." But then he leaned in a little closer and added, "What did my mother do now?" I didn't even need to answer him. I just gave a tiny, subtle glance in her direction. He followed my gaze. And when he saw the furious look on her face and then the hideous old yellow dress she had draped conspicuously over the back of her pew, his own expression hardened. He looked back at me and mouthed, "After the ceremony." And in that one moment, I knew everything was going to be okay. The ceremony went on beautifully. My voice didn't shake when I said my vows. My smile didn't fade for a second. And when we kissed, the whole room erupted in cheers. Afterward, my new husband confronted his mother privately. To this day, I don't know exactly what was said. He insisted on handling it himself, protecting me from any more drama. But I do know that she left early. Very early. She didn't stay for our first dance. She didn't stay for the cake cutting. She didn't stay for anything else. And honestly, I didn't miss her for a second. That night, when I finally took off my dress and laid it gently across a chair in our hotel room, I felt tears fill my eyes. They weren't tears of sadness or anger, but of overwhelming relief. I had kept my dignity. I had kept my special moment. Most importantly, I had kept Asterix myself. Asterix, and nothing, not even her most desperate attempt at sabotage, could ever ruin that. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have a crazy wedding story of your own, I'd love to read it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.